Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How is everybody? How's how's life? How's everybody doing? I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. If you celebrate, hope everybody had a good is having a good weekend. It is currently April. What the hell? November 26th, and it is Thanksgiving weekend. I hope everybody had a wonderful weekend or is having a wonderful weekend. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you had a good time with your family. Nobody drove you too crazy. Kids didn't act up too bad. Family was okay, tolerable. Um, I just did my cooking for the day and decided to hop on here and knock out a couple videos and do a few things. I don't know who decided that it was a woman thing to cook, because I missed the memo on that because I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. It is not something I prefer to do. But to everybody out there that does like to do it and does enjoy it, more power to you. Because it's exhausting. It's exhausting and it's just, I don't know. I love food. I love to eat. I just would prefer if somebody else does the cooking for me, honestly. But anyway, we, let me back up a minute. This is welcome if you're new here. Welcome if you are a returning viewer. Welcome back. This is Rush to Judgment with Jessica, and I'm Jessica. And here we take some time to do a couple things. Um, Basically, it's me giving my thoughts and opinions on trials, on true crime, on pretty much anything and everything that interests me at this time. Right now, it's trials. It could be current trials. It could be trials of the past. Um, and it's trials of the future. Um, I did I did my commentary on the George Zimmerman trial, the Chandler Holderson trial. This one that we're doing right now is the trial on an individual named George Burch. He was on trial for the murder of a young lady named Nikki Vanderhayden, and I did a true crime react to a little docuseries that kind of summarized the whole incident there. She went missing from a bar one night, said she was going to walk home. She was mad. She left the bar. Nobody saw her after that. She was found in a field, badly, brutally beaten, and murdered. And so the man on trial for that is George Burch. And so that is, I did the true crime react to that, and just had some questions and was able to find an actual stream of that trial. And so I went and picked a few bits and pieces that kind of shed some light on the trial itself and um, gave me a little bit of background on how they came about finding more information and were able to prove their case, that the docuseries did not go into. It was very short. It was very to the point. They said this, and this is how he was caught and convicted and yada, yada, and that's it. But, trials are longer. They go through more detail, sometimes excruciatingly detailed detail. But yeah, so try to pick out some things that I thought would be pertinent to the case. So, right now, this video is going to be some friends. We're still in the state's case, I believe, on day 6. And I think it's only, they do closing arguments on day, want to say they start closing arguments on day 9, if maybe day 10. So day 6, they're still in the state's case. And they're having, I think this is the defendant's friend that he went fishing with the next day. Not 100% sure. And then his girlfriend, the defendant's girlfriend, testifies. And then the babysitter testifies again. But then the babysitter testifies again for the defense. So there's a GPS guy that comes in and talks about how they were able to track George's phone and pinpoint it at locations, even the dump site where Nikki's body was found. And then the guy that did the Fitbit analysis as well. So, good God, sorry, it's been a day. Like I said, cooking is exhausting. All right, well, let's get into it. Get it started. Like I said, I think this is the guy that he went fishing with the next day.
Friday? You do, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have plans for that weekend?
Yes.
What were you going to do?
Fishing trip down in Racine.
Who was going?
Me and George and Mike, the owner of the boat.
Now, did you call the defendant George?
No,
What did you call him?
I called him Steve.
Did he have other nicknames?
Big Country.
When you knew him out east, did you know him as Steve?
Steve, yes.
Why, Steve?
Did you sometimes
It's weird.
go out to taverns with the defendant?
Occasionally.
Did you ever go to Richard Cranium's with him?
Once or twice, yes.
Richard Cranium, also
Now, you
maybe
said this
probably
boating
known
trip
as
down in
Dickheads.
Racine. Who all was going?
Me, Steve, and Mike, the captain, and Jimmy, the mate.
Do you know Mike's full name?
Mike Hankey.
Who owned the boat?
Mike.
And what would you guys fish for?
Salmon.
Did you go out on Lake Michigan?
Yes.
The night
Salmon.
before, do you recall about what time you went to bed?
About 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Do you remember what time you got up the next morning?
It was about 7 o'clock.
7 a.m.?
Yep.
What'd you do in the morning?
Let the dogs out.
How many dogs do you have?
2.
Do you stay up?
Yes.
What were you going to do that morning?
Build a herb garden for my wife.
On your property?
Yes.
What kind of herbs?
Whatever she plants.
Sounds like a good plan. Is she a good cook?
Yeah.
So this
What?
was a garden in addition to a garden you already had or separate?
Separate.
She likes to cook. Well, good on her.
So this would now be the day after Friday the 20th. This would now be May 21st, 2016?
Yep.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Did you see the defendant in that morning?
Yes.
What time?
Probably about noon, somewhere around there.
So that's the
Somewhere's
first you saw him
around
was
there.
around.
Yep.
Do you remember what time you left for the trip?
We probably headed down probably around 1:30, 2 o'clock.
In the afternoon.
Yes.
Did Linda go?
No.
Take you how long to get down to her scene?
2.5 hours.
Did you go fishing that day?
Yes.
Who all was on the boat?
Me, Steve, Mike, and Jimmy.
And again, Steve, you mean the defendant?
Yes.
What size boat is this?
Big
It's a
country.
30-foot Sea Ray.
Is that a specific boat designed for fishing?
Pretty much.
Does it have like those seats that are fishing seats, or is it more a boat?
More of a wide open back.
And how wide is the boat approximately?
About 10 feet wide.
So boat that size, what's the area where the occupants would be roughly?
About 10 by 15.
Kind of close quarters?
Yes.
Now,
See, it
you see the
jumps-
defendant here today. Is
Jumps
that
around.
the hairstyle he had back in May of 2016?
No.
Nope. He
How would
was
you describe his hair?
bald.
Shaved.
Do you recall the defendant wearing a hat on May 21st, that Saturday?
No.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk the same time you are. If you just want to give me a moment to finish the question, I don't want to talk over you. So his hair was shaved pretty close to the scalp at that point in time?
Yes.
In the morning hours, before you left for a scene, did the defendant share any stories from the night?
Yes.
And did you drive the defendant back to your home then at the conclusion on Sunday?
On Sunday, yes.
Did you have good luck on Sunday also?
Yes, we did.
On the drive back to your home, did the defendant bring up any unusual topics or indicate anything unusual taking place on May 20th or May 21st before you went fishing?
No.
Did there come a time following your fishing trip that you became aware of any news reports with respect to the homicide that had taken place in the Hoffman Road area?
I'm on Channel 11 News.
You remember watching the news on TV it was?
Yes.
Was anyone with you when you observed this?
A couple times, Linda and also Steve.
You do remember the defendant being present in the room when the report came on?
Yes.
Did you happen to recall, was he there more than once when news was reported on this subject?
It was at least once or twice, yes.
And did the news reports, without going into it, did they go into some of the detail of to what had been learned at that point with respect to the homicide?
Yes.
Where would you have been watching this?
What do you mean?
Where were you, at your home?
Oh, yes.
What room?
In the living room.
Okay. And do you recall remarking when you learned about this murder, anything about the case itself?
Yes.
What did you say?
I said the scumbag that did it ought to be taken down.
Did the defendant have a response to that comment?
Not at all.
Did you notice his attention or his demeanor when these reports would come on?
He was pretty intensely looking at the TV.
On May 21st, at any point in time, either before you left your house, in the car, or on the boat with the defendant, did you notice any injuries to his head?
No.
Did you have a good view of his head during that time period?
Yes.
Didn't see any bruising,
No.
no swelling,
No.
no abrasions,
No.
no contusions,
No.
and he had no hat on for that time period you were on the boat?
No hat.
On June 8th, 2016, did you learn that your vehicle had been involved in a hit and run?
Yes.
Did you then learn also at that time period that it had been suffered fire damage?
Yes,
And when I say your vehicle, I'm referring to the red Blazer that you spoke of earlier, not the car you or your wife drove. Is that correct?
correct.
Did the police come to your home?
Yes,
Is that how you first became aware of it?
yes,
Following it, did you go view your vehicle once you made this discovery? Did you go take a look at the vehicle?
yes,
And did you then observe any damage to the vehicle aside from fire damage?
yes.
Where was that mainly?
The right front corner.
And did you see if in fact there was fire damage?
Yes.
And where did that appear to be?
Front seat.
Was it in the trunk? Was it in the engine area?
No. In the passenger compartment.
On June 8, 2016, the defendant was still living with you, is that correct?
Yes,
And he had his own bedroom, is that right?
yes,
Did you allow him to bring women home? Did you have any rules against it?
no,
So that was a leave for good or just leave for a short time period?
for good.
Did you purchase anything for him at this point in time?
We purchased him a bus ticket to go back to Virginia.
On September 7th of 2016, is it correct you met with Brown County Sheriff's Department
Correct.
individuals? You gave them statements, is that correct?
Correct.
You gave them access to your phone?
Yes,
In fact, you made them aware of this photo, is that correct?
Correct.
I'm sorry, the fishing trip photo?
Yep.
I don't have any further questions, thank you.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Jackson, thank you. May I step down? You want him excused?
Yes, we ask them to be excused, please. Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Jackson is excused. Your next witness. Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready. Oh.
Thank you. Are you able to get that to work?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. You're just getting over a cold?
Yes, I am.
You need to refresh yourself. Feel free. And I'm going to ask you, how old are you?
Really? 57.
I won't ask any other personal questions.
That's rude.
Do you know an Ed Jackson?
Yes, I do.
How long have you known him?
About 8 years,
And have you been together for some time?
6 years plus.
Did you marry him?
Yes, I did.
And when was that?
August 13th of 16.
And do you live in the Green Bay area?
Yes. Never talked about it, but he's an adult, so.
Okay. So
it was
there's
okay.
no rule
Just
against
another
that,
day.
correct?
Nope.
In fact, did you ever see him with any women?
Yeah, he had a girl that he's spent a lot of time with, and her name was Jordan.
Now, did the defendant arrive in town with a working phone,
Yes,
a phone that was working?
yes.
On May 20th of 2016.
A working
was there
phone?
anything you did
A
with
phone
respect
that
to
was
him on
working?
having access to phones?
Yes, his phone, he told me his ex-wife was gonna cancel their plan, so he would not have a phone. And he was going to get, one from Walmart, but they don't work in the house very well, because we've had other people that have had that happen. So I took him to Cellcom, and that afternoon, or about 5 o'clock, I got him a phone on my plan.
So you got an additional phone for
Yes.
your plan?
Yes,
It wasn't a phone you had sitting around the house already?
no,
And you literally put him on your plan, is that correct?
yes.
And who made the payments for that?
I made him, but he was going to pay me when he got paid.
And he did work from time to time while he lived with you, did he not?
Yes,
Did he get behind in the payments for the phone?
yes.
Imagine that.
did he get behind in payments for the rent?
Yes, Ed had mentioned that.
He continued to live in the bedroom though, is that correct?
Yeah.
And he continued to use the blazer, is that right?
Yep.
Are you aware of any certain bars or taverns that he frequented?
I know one of the main ones was Richard Cranium's.
Were you ever there with him?
We went there the weekend that we were celebrating Ed's birthday. On a Saturday night, he met us at another bar, Mikey's, and then we ended up at Richard Cranium's.
It was going to be said sooner or later.
I told you so.
So you went there at least one occasion with him, is that correct?
Yes,
Do you remember a fishing trip that your husband and the defendant took to Racine in May of 2016?
yes,
You didn't go with them, is that correct?
no.
Do you remember if you saw them in the morning before they left?
Well, I know I saw Ed and I think I went to work that day.
Okay.
I'm not really sure, but I know I wasn't home.
Do you-
But he always calls me and tells me he's going fishing.
Is that one of his favorite hobbies?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Do you remember, were you working at all in your garden that morning, or do you remember what hours you went to work?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But I know that I got a picture from Ed because he finished my herb garden that day. The base, he put an herb garden together for me.
Oh, he sent you a picture of it?
Yes.
That's nice. Were you aware what time he took off? And if you weren't there, that's fine.
No.
Was the plan that he was going to be gone, leave Saturday, get back Sunday?
Yes.
Okay, and is that in fact what took place?
Yeah.
And the defendant was going with them, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you know the gentleman with whom they were going to go fishing with?
Yes.
And that's who?
Mike Hankey, A1 Charters.
You've met him before? is
Oh,
that-
yes. He's been a longtime family friend.
You're friends with his wife also?
Absolutely.
Now, back in May of 2016, how would you describe the defendant's hairstyle?
I wouldn't say his head was never shaven, but it was very, very short.
Very different than it is today, is that correct?
Yes.
Following their fishing trip, did they return to your house on Sunday?
Yeah.
Did you see both of them?
I believe so.
Did you notice anything unusual about the defendant's head when you saw him after the fishing trip?
No.
Notice any injuries to his head?
No. With his fish that he caught.
Let me show you what's been marked Exhibit 113. Do you recognize, in fact, that photo?
Yes, I do. That was one that Ed had sent me that day.
So on May 21st, on this Racine fishing trip, that's the photo that was sent to you by your husband, Ed?
Yes.
And who's shown in that photo?
George.
Okay, the defendant's shown,
Yes.
and he's got a nice sized fish, is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you usually get bigger ones?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Sorry.
I have a lot to learn about fishing. So with respect to that, the hairstyle that he's shown in that photo, is that about how you recall it in May of 2016?
Yes.
With respect to the steps that you have taken,
Yes.
you find it to be generally accurate to not show steps when you're not moving?
No.
It's not accurate?
Oh, yeah, it is accurate. Yeah.
Okay. So overall, it's generally accurate for your activity, is that correct? Or your not activity?
Both.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Ms. Jackson.
Morning.
Just a few more questions for you. When George, or Steve, as you know him, got here from Virginia, did he have a job lined up?
No, but he only took him 2 days to get one.
Okay, so he got a job within the first 2 days of being here?
Yes.
What was that job?
He worked at Blackstone as a manager and cook.
Okay.
Assistant manager and cook.
And did he start working there
Yes.
essentially the day he got the job?
Yep.
He worked long hours?
A lot. Yes.
They essentially worked him like a dog?
Absolutely.
And you were able to observe that, seeing how you were living with them?
Yes.
And you actually you and Ed kind of encouraged him or counseled him to maybe find a different opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay, so you helped him make the decision to leave Blackstone.
Yep.
Okay, and after he left Blackstone, he got another job doing landscaping. Is that correct?
Yes, at NEW Landscaping.
Okay, and he worked there regularly
Yeah,
every day.
yeah.
Okay, and are you aware NEW Landscaping what kind of work Steve was doing during the days?
Yeah, they would haul dirt. and
Landscaping?
Do landscaping.
Okay, so
We really never talked about what he did, but I do know that that's what they do there, so.
okay. Now, I think you said on May 20th that Ed was working on your herb garden,
Yes,
and you knew that.
Objection, I don't think that's the testimony, May 20th.
no, not the 20th,
Wait,
but the
hold on.
21st.
Linda, just hold on for a second. The question was what day, May 20th?
I could have misspoke. I could just ask Miss
Why
Jackson.
don't rewind and ask the question again?
Which day was it that you remember Ed working on your herb garden?
I know he worked on the 21st because he sent me a picture. But I do know that Steve, George, and I worked on it another day as well because we had to take out the old herb garden to put the new one in. So it was not just done that day.
So it's okay. And so you said Steve had helped you with that project?
Mhm,
He helped you with all sorts of projects, right?
mhm.
Oh,
Yes.
he's such a good guy.
And you believe it
You
was that May
know, he just-
21st that Steve and Ed ended up going on that fishing trip?
Yes,
He just murdered the one
And you
girl
recall that
in a
because they were sending
brutal
you photos of the
way.
fish they were catching.
But
yes,
he helped this
That was the
lady
same
put
day
in an
that
herb
earlier in the
garden.
day, Ed had sent you the photo of the herb garden.
yes.
He just so, ugh,
Now,
he's just so
back in
misunderstood, y'all.
2016, do you remember meeting with law enforcement about this matter?
I think it was September of 2016.
You went to the Brown County Sheriff's Office and spoke with law enforcement.
Yes,
They specifically told you why they were talking to you,
yes,
and that was they were investigating Mr. Burch's role in I guess, a death. Did they tell
Yeah.
you that?
yes,
And they essentially were just asking you about anything and everything you may know or may not know about that.
Oh my God,
yes,
y'all. I'm sitting here
And they were
listening
asking you
to it
questions about
in
specific
the regular
dates,
speed.
yes.
No wonder.
specific vehicles.
Yep.
And also just kind of general background stuff about his job and how you do them.
Yes,
And when they were asking you about dates, you used your phone, calendar, and text messages to kind of piece things together.
yes,
And when you were discussing the fishing trip with them, when you're trying to figure out that time, you actually used your phone to find those photographs, find those texts, so you could tell him when it happened.
Yeah.
So when you were meeting with law enforcement, you were looking at your phone, looking at those photographs. Well, let me rephrase that question. You can just ignore everything I just said. That photograph that we just talked about and gave to the jury, that was one of those photographs that was sent to you,
yes,
and you were looking at it on your phone when you were meeting with law enforcement.
yes,
And law enforcement was asking you if there was anything unusual that you could think of regarding that time frame.
yes,
And again, you had that photo in front of you,
yes,
and you knew they were looking into George's role, or suspicion of his role in this.
yes.
And you reported that there's absolutely nothing that sticks out to you about being unusual.
At the time, it didn't. I mean, it was pretty shocking. So, and trying to remember dates, had a lot going on that summer.
Right.
So,
So again, at that time, you had this photograph, you had looked at it, and you didn't make any notice, or you didn't let law enforcement know of anything that was suspicious at that time.
correct.
Because at that time, you didn't remember anything suspicious.
Yeah, they just went fishing.
And you didn't tell law enforcement, or actually you just said he didn't have any injuries to his head.
I didn't see him that day before he went fishing, but I didn't see anything when they came home.
Okay. And that's not only his head, but his whole body, nothing stuck out to you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a brief question about what you said on your earlier testimony. What is it that's on your wrist?
It's Cellcom's version of Fitbit.
So it's not a Fitbit?
No.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
All right, any redirect, Attorney Kerrigan-Maris?
You were asked about phones. Did the defendant ever give you back the phone that you had loaned him?
No,
Nothing further.
Anything on that?
Once Mr. Burch stopped residing with you, he did make some back payments towards you, correct?
yes,
No further questions.
Ms. Jackson, thank you. May step down. And you are really excused. Let's have another witness.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Robert Michael Bordelais, Bourdelais.
Thank you.
Counsel, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Bordelais, can you state for the record how you are employed
Police officer for the city of Green Bay.
and what is your current assignment with the city of Green Bay?
Right now, I'm a community police officer.
Have you held other assignments with the Green Bay Police Department?
Yes.
What are those other assignments?
Patrol officer and a member of the neighborhood response team.
How long have you been working with the Green Bay Police Department?
20 years in March.
And were you working with the Green Bay Police Department on the morning of June 8th of 2016?
Yes, I was.
And do you recall what was one of the first things you did that day?
About 7:30 a.m., I was dispatched to an auto theft complaint.
You know the location of the auto theft complaint?
912 South Green Bay Ave.
And when you arrived on scene, what did you do?
I spoke with a complainant, Edward Jackson.
About what?
One of his vehicles was stolen overnight, apparently. Or Linda Clayton's vehicle, his fiance's vehicle.
Do you recall what type of vehicle it was?
99 Chevy Blazer.
You know who was allegedly driving that vehicle on a regular basis?
Ed told me the last person that drove the vehicle was his friend Steve.
And by Steve, you mean Mr. Burch?
Yes, George Stephen Burch.
Did you eventually have contact with Mr. Burch that morning?
Yes.
And do you see Mr. Burch in court here today?
Yes, I do.
Can you describe where he's seated and what he's wearing?
Seated at the defense table, wearing a blue plaid button-up shirt.
That's the record to reflect the witness identify the defendant.
Record will still reflect.
Did the defendant provide information to you about the alleged vehicle theft?
Yes, he did.
And what was his statement to you at that time?
He indicated he had used the vehicle the previous night. And after he was done using it, he drove home, parked it in the driveway, and must have left it unlocked with the keys on it because this morning it was missing. That morning it was missing.
You recall where the defendant said he had been with the vehicle the previous night?
He said he had driven to Richard Cranium's bar, which was just a few blocks down the street.
So Richard Cranium's bar, just a few blocks from the Greenwood Avenue address.
Yes.
Did you actually observe the Blazer that morning on June 8th of 2016?
No, I didn't.
Were you aware that the vehicle had been involved in other incidents?
Yes.
What two incidents, in addition to the theft complaint, was that vehicle involved in?
Well, prior to being dispatched to the theft complaint, I had noticed, I looked up prior calls in my area from the night before and noticed that that vehicle had been involved in a vehicle fire in the 800 block of South Maple Avenue. And while investigating the auto theft complaint, I spoke with one of my lieutenants, came to the scene, and he was able to find information that the vehicle was involved in a hit and run accident prior to the vehicle fire the night before.
And based on that, you were following up to obtain more information from the vehicle owner and the person who may have been using the vehicle regularly.
Yes.
You know what the location of the hit and run?
400 block of Bader Street.
On the east side?
Yes.
As part of your investigation in the case, did you ask Mr. Burch to provide some information to you?
Yes, I did. He had indicated that he had been texting a friend of his that lived over on Bader Street while he was at the bar. At some point, I asked him myself, and my lieutenant asked him if he would be willing to show us the text messages between him and his friend.
And did he do that?
Yes, he gave us permission to look at his text messages. And at that point, I asked him if I could just take his phone to the department, have one of our analysts download the information off the phone just to make it easier to search.
Yeah,
through
we
all the
got a new
information.
puppy.
Did you ask Mr. Burch to fill out a
The
consent form?
kids are
Yes, I did.
obsessed.
Did he complete a consent form for the download of his phone?
Yes.
Mr. Borland, showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 124. Can you identify that?
So City of Green Bay Police Department consent to search form.
Involved consent to search the cell phone that Mr. Burch provided to you.
Yes.
In fact, that's indicated on the form.
Yes.
After you received the form and the phone, what did you do?
Well, I took a written statement from Mr. Burch, and then I stopped at Richard Cranium's bar, spoke with the owner, looked at some of the video footage from the night before. He indicated he would download the footage for me. I left him a USB stick, and then I drove to the police department to have the phone information downloaded by our analyst.
With respect to the hit and run incident, do you know how that was resolved?
The case was closed out pending further information. I wasn't able to determine if the vehicle was stolen.
So he got caught
And with respect to the fire, were you able to
because
obtain information
of
regarding that?
a hit and
I did speak
run
with members from the fire
incident.
department, but based off of their
He
report
got
that was
picked
completed at
up
the time
on
that they
suspicion
arrived on the
of a
scene,
hit
I
and
wasn't able
run.
to use any of that information.
And that's how they got
solve,
this DNA
fire
and his
or
phone
the auto theft.
records.
And did they actually provide information that it's possible that the equipment in the vehicle was responsible for starting the fire?
I mean, I got a copy of the report, and based off of the information that was on it, it was inconclusive as far as I could determine.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you.
Cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. Officer Bordelai, this incident that you've been talking about, this was in June of 2016, correct?
Yes.
Do you remember the exact date? Was it June 8th?
June 8th, correct?
And when you were looking into these matters, Mr. Burch was cooperative that entire time, correct?
Yes,
He gave you consent to search his phone.
correct.
He wanted to show you the text messages that he was sending that night.
I asked him, we asked him if he's willing to show us that information, just to see if he would cooperate with that. And he did. So.
And then I'm just going to read directly from your report on June 10th. You concluded at this time there's no information to prove Steve was the one driving the Blazer during the accident. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then right in that same sentence, and an unknown cause for the fire other than possibly started on fire due to the damage from the accident, correct?
Yes.
And then just going into specifically what you referred to from the fire department, this is that same report. You were able to glean that the ignition of the fire was determined to be the operator passenger area of the vehicle caused by a failure of equipment or heat source with contributing factors determined to be collision, knockdown, run over, or turnover. That's correct?
That's the information that was on the fire department's report.
Thank you.
Any redirect? Officer Bordelai, thank you. Step down. You're excused, ladies and gentlemen. We'll take about a 15-minute morning break, and then we'll be back for the balance of the morning testimony.
All rise.
All right, let's be seated, everyone. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the state's ready to call its next witness.
State calls Kendall Danowski.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Kendall Danowski, Danelski.
Thank you.
You may be seated if you just speak into the microphones, and then Attorney Saunders, whenever you're ready.
Can you state for the record how you're currently employed?
I'm employed by the Green Bay Police Department as their certified forensic computer examiner.
And can you describe for us some of the duties that you're responsible for in that role?
Yeah, I deal with all phones and computers that come in. I extract and analyze the data or give that data in a report to officers, detectives, and they can go through that and analyze that
That
data as well.
audio is
And can you outline for us
Shit.
some of the education you received as part of that employment?
Yes, I have a bachelor's degree from Cardinal Stretch University in Milwaukee. I have that in business, and I have some computer studies courses as well. I'm a certified forensic computer examiner through IASIS, which is the International Association of Computer Investigative Specialists. I also am certified with Celebrate as a logical operator and a physical analyst. I'm certified through Access Data as an Access Data certified examiner. I'm certified through Griffi with their software, the Griffi Analyze software. And I've also taken the class with NW3C as the class of basic data recovery and acquisition. And I also was trained by a CFCE with a certified forensic computer examiner who was there previously for 7 years. He trained me for about a year.
And how long have you been employed as the role that you're currently in? How long have you been doing that for?
Almost 2 years.
It was at a laboratory, and since then I've taken numerous courses and workshops to bolster my education in the field.
Been marked as Exhibit 125. Can you identify that document?
What are you?
Part of your duty as a forensic scientist with the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory, were you asked
Nope.
to participate in the evaluation of some evidence in a case name that the lab entitled Nicole D. Vanderheiden?
Yes,
And what was your role in terms of the items that you were asked to examine?
I was asked to examine
We will
some cables and some
move on.
wire and a piece of wire that was,
No.
I believe, identified as
This might
recovered
be-
from a tank top.
And how did you receive those items at your laboratory?
The items are usually received in a sealed and unopened condition, and then they're logged in, and then they're put into a locked evidence cabinet until I take them out and work them.
And with respect to your receipt of these specific items, did you note anything unusual in terms of the way they were packaged, or did it appear to be done according to protocol?
No, everything was fine.
With respect to your opinions in this case, did you ultimately generate a report?
Yes,
Mr. Jones, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 126. Can you identify that document?
yes, this is a copy of my laboratory report with my name and initials on it.
You were asked to analyze basically two separate pieces of cord wire and then an additional piece of wire that reportedly came from the tank top. What specifically were you asked to analyze with respect to those items?
Well, just to examine them to see if there were any consistencies or inconsistencies between the small wire from the tank top and the cable that was submitted.
Potentially consistent, but they potentially all come from the same source.
Yes.
So let's show you what's been previously marked as exhibits 23 and exhibits 79. I would ask you to take a look at both of those items. Those items appear to be the items that you were asked to analyze.
Yes, they are. There's a tag that I put my, the item designation and my initials on both pieces of cable.
I don't know. Long story short,
That's your tag.
Yes.
Mr. Burch's DNA was
And ladies
found
and gentlemen,
on the murder
as we did one other
weapon.
day, we'll recess a little earlier today. We'll have about the same amount of time for lunch. I'd ask you to return at 1 o'clock. Have a good lunch.
All right.
All right, Mr. Riddle, thank you very much. You may step down. You're excused. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our afternoon break, 15 minutes, and then we'll reconvene.
All right.
And then there's a bunch of more forensics and yada yada yadas and
We're
yada
back on
yada
the record in the
yadas.
Birch matter. The appearances are the same as they've been throughout the day, and the state is ready for its next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. We call Jordan Schuyler to the stand.
Attorney, if you come forward, and Jody will swear you in by the witness stand.
Well, this is the defendant's girlfriend.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? After that, please state your full name and spell your last name.
Jordan Schuyler, Schuyler.
Jordan, you may be seated. Just speak into the microphone, please, and then Attorney Kerrigan Maris whenever you're ready.
Just make yourself comfortable. If you feel like you need to scoot forward a little bit in the chair. There's some water up there too if you feel like you need it. Thank you. Jordan, how old are you?
I'm 22.
And what's your birth date?
September
22.
1995.
And have you always lived in this area?
Yeah, my whole life.
Where do you live? What's your address?
329 Baker Street.
And that's in Green Bay?
Yes.
Have you always lived at that address?
Yes.
So you were born in that home?
Yeah.
Okay. Who do you live there with? And what's her name?
Heather Schuyler.
And I'm going to ask you, are you employed now?
No.
Were you employed in May of 2016?
Yes.
Did you have a job before that? Was it the same job in April?
Yeah.
Where'd you work?
At Blackstone.
And what's Blackstone?
It's a restaurant.
It's been around for quite a while?
Yeah.
Okay. What'd you do there?
I was like cleaning and I helped waitress occasionally.
Okay. And do you remember when you started working there or when you
She's
first
a
went
baby.
into business there? Just roughly?
Roughly around like a little bit before April.
Okay. In 2016 though, right?
Yeah.
Did your mom also work there?
Yeah.
Did you meet anyone while you were there?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yeah, sorry, yes.
No problem. And what was that person's name who you met?
George Burch.
Okay. And what did you call him?
Steve.
Okay. Was he also working there?
Correct.
What kind of jobs did he do?
He was the cook.
Do you remember what month it was approximately you met him?
Around April, middle.
April 2016.
Yes.
Okay. Did you become friends at first?
Correct.
At some point in time, did you start dating him?
Correct.
Did it become a romantic relationship?
Correct.
And how often would you see each other, say in April or May 2006?
Every day.
You stay in contact as well when you weren't with each other?
Yes.
And to me, that would mean a phone. At someone your age, how would you be in touch with people?
Texting, calling, Facebook, Snapchat,
Okay.
any type of social media.
Did you hear from him pretty often?
Yes.
And during April and May of 2016, were you also responding pretty often?
Yes.
But you actually were with
crazy.
him on a pretty daily basis throughout a week?
Yes.
Did you know where he was living?
Yes.
Where was he living?
He was living with Ed and Linda over off of Broadway, kind of. I forgot which street it was on.
And was that the Jacksons?
Yes.
Did you ever go to that home?
Yes.
And you got to meet the Jacksons?
Correct.
Did he ever come to your home?
No.
Was that on Greenwood Avenue, if you recall, his residence with the Jacksons?
I think so, yeah.
Did you consider yourself being in a close relationship with Mr. Burch?
I thought so, yes.
Do you remember there being a time that Mr. Burch told you that he was going to go on a fishing trip?
Yes.
Did you know with whom he was going?
With Ed and like another boy, I think, or something.
Okay. Were they heading down to Racine?
Mhm.
Is
Yes.
that-
Yes.
Did you go with him?
No.
Do you know if Linda was going with?
No, Linda was not going with.
Okay. And do you remember, was that a weekend trip they were going to take?
If I remember correctly, yes.
Did you, on the Friday before he was leaving, did you see him on that occasion?
We were talking, and I'm pretty sure I hung out with him in like the morning.
But not the evening, is that correct?
No.
I'm sorry, I put that badly. Were you with him in the evening on that Friday?
No, not the evening.
Okay. And you would expected him to be gone that weekend, is that correct?
Correct.
While he was gone, did you find out, did he in fact go fishing? Did you see any pictures or anything?
Yes, he sent me a picture to my phone of him catching the fish.
And was that something that he would normally do, keep track of what he was doing and send you pictures sometimes?
Yes.
Did you see him when he returned after the fishing trip?
Yes.
Do you remember Did he come back that Saturday or did he come back Sunday, if you remember?
I don't remember exactly, but I do remember seeing him after the fishing trip.
And it was right after he got back, is that correct?
I would say maybe a couple hours, and then I came over and seen him.
Okay. Now, was his hair pretty short back then?
Yes.
Did you notice anything about his head? Anything unusual?
No.
Did you see any injuries, any bruising, abrasions to his head?
No.
Did you continue to stay in your relationship with him through May of 2016?
Yes.
And did your relationship continue, this romantic relationship, in June and July and August of 2016?
Yes.
Did you still see him pretty much every day or stay in contact with him very regularly?
Yes.
Okay. And then you were aware he was arrested in September of 2016, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Up until the
Already.
time of his arrest, at any point in time, did he indicate to you that something unusual had happened before he went on that fishing trip to Racine?
No.
Did he ever discuss with you a homicide that had happened off Hoffman Road of a young mother? Did that subject ever come up with him?
No.
I am going to ask if you could tell me, is Mr. Burch the person that you had been seeing? And let me rephrase that. Are you still in a relationship with Mr. Burch?
No.
Mr. Burch, you were having the relationship back in 2016. Is he in the courtroom?
Yes.
Could you tell me what he's wearing and where he's seated, please?
To the right, he's wearing a blue shirt.
I'd ask the record to reflect identification of the defendant.
Record will reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant in open court. Go ahead.
She's nervous.
Thank you.
All right. Cross-examination.
Hey, Jordan, just a few more questions for you, okay? When you were back in, I guess, May, June of 2016, were you aware that George bought some new shoes?
Yes.
Were you with him when he bought those shoes?
Yes.
You remember why he bought those shoes?
Because his other shoes were very bad.
What do you mean?
Like they were dirty, there were holes in them. It just wasn't a good pair of shoes.
Did you make fun of him for him?
Yeah,
You think that might have had something to do with why he got new shoes?
probably.
And then Attorney Kerrigan-Mares was asking you if you observed any injuries to his head once he got back from that fishing trip. You actually didn't observe any injuries at all. Is that correct?
Correct.
Nothing on his hands,
Correct.
anywhere?
No.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any redirect?
No, thank you. I'd ask
Never
him to be excused.
said
All
he
right, Jordan, thank
beat
you.
him with his
Down.
hands.
State's next witness.
Still will recall Detective Slinger.
Detective Slinger, if you'll come forward, and Jody will swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Brian Slinger, S as in Sam, Linger.
The arrest of Mr. Burch. Do you recall on what date that was?
September 7th, 2016.
And after that arrest, did you seek to obtain some biographical information of Mr. Burch?
I did.
And were you able to learn his height and weight at that time?
Yes.
And what was that?
I believe he advised me he was 6'7", 260 pounds.
What about date of birth? Did the defense provide that to you as well?
February 14th of 1978.
Subsequent to that arrest, do you continue investigating this crime?
I did.
And can you describe some of the things you were investigating from that point on?
From the arrest on, we were focusing on evidence that would have been obtained during the search warrant at his residence on 15th, as well as looking into statements that were given by people that we had identified that were associated with Mr. Burch.
Are you continuing at this point to obtain DNA samples from individuals?
Yes, once we had identified some of the people that were associated with Mr. Burch, Ed Jackson, Linda Jackson, some of the other people that you've seen up here, Jeffrey Hemmon, Matthew Weisenberg, we did reach out to them, obtain statements from them, as well as ask for a consensual buccal swab for their DNA.
And did you obtain those buccal swabs?
We did.
And were those ultimately sent to the Wisconsin State Crime Lab?
Correct.
And again, based on your prior testimony, you were primarily responsible for deciding which items got sent to the lab?
Correct.
Going back to the initial stage of the investigation, are you familiar?
So in
with the area,
2016, he was
around
38.
Doug Nicole's residence?
I am.
And
And
are
that
you able to
girl
say
was
approximately how
probably
many times you've driven by
21.
that location?
Since the crime or since the incident, probably well over 100. During the investigation, I had pretty much
Twice
driven it
her
every day
age.
to walk through everything back in my head. I also have some
Oof.
acquaintances that live back in that neighborhood. So I had been over to their residence for social matters as well.
When you say you're driving from that neighborhood, where are you driving to when you travel that path?
Well, that path would be just south of the Brown County Sheriff's Office. So I would travel that route back to the Sheriff's Office, take a left-hand turn. So going back westbound on Hoffman Road and then traveling down to where the body was located on Bellevue Street on Hoffman.
So driving from Berkeley Road to Hoffman Road, can you describe that general drive for us?
Like I stated earlier, it's about 3 miles, 3.2 miles between there and that. There's not a lot of residences, mostly industrial businesses. A few, I believe there's a park along the way. And then once you get down to where the sheriff's office is, it becomes a little bit more congested with new businesses and new developments.
And looking specifically towards Hoffman Road from GB or Monroe Road, are you able to see the location where Nikki's body was located from GB?
You are not. The road on Hoffman Road goes to the west for a brief period of time. And when you get past the sheriff's department, there is an elderly care center or some sort of facility like that, which would be on the south side of the road, probably like 6 or 7
I
stories
forget
high.
why I
And then Hoffman Road
picked
curves to the
this
left
to
or
watch.
back to the south. So there's a
I
pretty
think
big
it
curve
was
in the
just
road
to
where you cannot see
pinpoint
directly
like
down
he was
Hoffman Road.
finally arrested.
And what about from Berkeley Road? Are you able to see the field in Hoffman Road from that location?
No,
And the area around Doug and Nicole's residence, are there street lamps in that area?
there are some.
Where are those located?
The closest one I could find to their actual residence would have been a little bit further to the east, near the next closest intersection, which probably would have been about 3 or 4 houses down.
You are familiar with the area where there was blood located on the roadway in Berkeley Road?
Yes.
And are there any street lamps in that area?
No.
At a certain point during the investigation, you also sent items that were located in Litchfield Park to the crime lab. Is that correct?
Correct.
And can you describe, we've heard several different names from, can you describe what was sent and what was located?
There were a brown paper towel that you would typically find at a bar or a restaurant that would come out of one of those machines that you have on the wall that are used more in an industrial or business type of setting.
And there were also tissues located in the Dietrich residence, correct?
Correct.
And were those similar to the ones located in Litchfield Park?
No, the tissues at the residence were more along the lines of like either a white Kleenex or white toilet paper type of thing.
And that tissue located in the Dietrich residence was also sent to the crime lab?
The tissue from the residence as well as the tissue from the bathroom was sent to the crime lab from the bathroom at the park, the brown paper towel.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Just a moment, Your Honor.
Sergeant Slinger, just 1 or 2 questions. So you talked about being very familiar with Berkeley Road and GV, correct?
Correct.
When you're driving north on GV, can you see Bellevue Road from that intersection?
Whatever.
Driving north
What's the
on
point?
Bellevue Road.
All right,
Well,
this
besides
is
the
day
typical,
7.
Like, hey, how you doing? How's it been? That type of stuff. But that did stick out.
Nothing further, Judge.
Any recross at all?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Levens, thank you. You may step down.
He was
Your next witness?
he was the guy Nikki was
The
talking
defense
to
would
at
call
the
Dallas
bar.
Kennedy.
He didn't really have anything.
Alice, if you come
To
back
say.
up here again to the witness stand, Jody will swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your full name and spell your last.
Dallas Kennedy, Kennedy.
Thank
What
you.
cat is it?
Dallas, thanks for coming back and testifying. So I know you talked a lot last time you were in court, and we don't want to just repeat all of that. So just to refresh everyone's memory, how do you know Nicole?
Mutual friend, and then we used to work together.
And did you get to know Dylan as well?
Yes.
Oh man, I'm going out of order.
How many times did you babysit for him?
Maybe about 2 months, a few times a week.
And then were you asked to baby on the night of May 20th, morning of May 21st?
Yes.
Yes,
And you did
we've
that?
been over this.
And then sometime in the morning of May 21st, Doug and Greg returned home.
Yes.
And then eventually they left, correct?
Greg left, not Doug.
Greg left. And then you eventually returned home,
Yes.
and you were aware that Nikki didn't return home, correct?
Yes.
And how did you know that?
She didn't come back with them when they came home at bar close. Her phone was off when they went to call her. She just wasn't around at
She
that
just
time.
wasn't there. She
And
didn't
were
come
you
home.
Trying to get a hold of her?
I called a few times. Yes.
Did you try to talk to anybody else about getting a hold of her?
The next morning, I contacted her sister. I contacted Doug, and that was it.
Did you stay in contact with Doug about what happened to her?
We
A few times throughout that day, sporadically, not like in close contact, along with her sister. We messaged a few times.
Objection, judge asked and answered.
Did you ever find out what did ultimately happen to Nikki?
Eventually, I'd say 2 days after it all happened.
And what kind of emotional state were you in?
I was in the investigator's office. It was about midnight. I got my phone back and everything started coming through on my phone. And I think I went into complete shock.
And what'd you do next?
I sat there shaking
Yeah.
profusely and crying. And
We went out of order
escorted to a friend's
because
house.
part 1 of day 7
Did you have
was
contact
before
with Doug
this.
Dietrich after that?
He called me the next morning.
And when he called you, what was the nature of that conversation?
First, he reached out via Facebook Messenger asking if I could call him. I then returned with my phone number, and he called me back probably 5 to 7 minutes later, basically telling me that he was.
Detail with respect to conversations.
Attorney Sugar?
I think that she's allowed to define the nature of what they were talking about.
It's called hearsay, Your Honor.
Sounds like hearsay, and I haven't heard any exception to the hearsay rule at this point. I don't know what she's going to testify to, but anything Dietrich told her would be hearsay.
Well, one of the next things, Judge, is hearsay, one of the things that we're trying to drive at. And ultimately, it's getting at inconsistent statements that Doug Dietrich himself made earlier in this trial. So that's the hearsay argument, not for these very specific things that will lead up to that, but
Your Honor, the court knows how one properly asks a question to a witness if there's been a statement made that someone else has indicated was not made. That's the format that one follows, not just what was said. So I understand that there may be pursuance of that type of questioning, but we need to get to that then.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain the objection. You may try to restate the question, Attorney Sugar.
sure. Dallas, did you eventually question Doug about what happened to Nicole?
Let me just ask one date.
When was this conversation with Doug? If you
I believe
remember?
it was the 22nd of May, just kind of going over that.
She's
we were
telling
both
him
in
the questions to
investigator's
ask.
office. And he basically had stated that that was her body that they had found and that she had passed. And basically in conversation, I just asked, what happened? What happened? And he just replied, I don't know. She hit her head and then she just wanted to walk home. She just wanted to walk home. Just in a conversation. It was just conversation between two people, just in shock. I asked if he was with family and that he should just be with his family right now. And if he needed anything, reach out later, but kind of grieve with your family.
So specifically, when you had asked him what happened, he said, I don't know, she hit her head, correct?
It came out of his mouth, that comment. I don't know what that meant, but it came out of his mouth.
And then what did you do?
It was just kind of silent, just taking everything all in. The conversation was short. It was pretty much ended after that. I think he just wanted to let me know that they found out the news that she's no longer with them. So.
She hit her head and
When
she
you were
wanted to
babysitting
walk
Dylan
home.
and when Doug and you were the only two people in the house, Doug asked to smoke weed, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, I ask you not put in hearsay with respect to what Doug stated, and this is his witness, he can't leave.
Well, this has already been presented to the jury. You're right, but I'll assume Attorney Shuckert, it's not being offered now as the truth of the matter asserted, but simply foundational to your next line of questioning. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Thank you. Is that
Thank
correct?
you.
Yes.
And then what happened?
He proceeded to just take a
They
hit,
smoked weed.
and conversation happened.
What did you do next then?
I was just trying to get out of the house, just gather my things and walk towards the door.
And what were you feeling at that time?
Objection, material.
Relevancy?
That's what was happening at that time.
We vote, Your Honor.
We've already fucking been through this, Your Honor.
Okay, our sidebar was just in terms of continuing the testimony.
I mean, if you're going to
properly.
explain the
Attorney
sidebar,
Shuckert, go
then
ahead.
why don't
Thank
you
you.
I'm going to
just
sustain that last objection. So.
let them do
And Dallas,
speaking
why did you decide to leave?
objections?
Because Nicole didn't come home. I didn't feel comfortable being there with her not being there. And I just wanted to get back, just wanted to get out of there.
And when you left, did you drive there?
Yes.
So what did you do then?
I got into my car.
And I
locked the
drove
doors,
home?
Just kind of looked around the cul-de-sac a little bit.
Why did you lock your doors?
I was just scared. I didn't think he would do anything. I was just scared. I don't know. Everything just seemed so odd in the evening.
It's a strange feeling.
Just wanted to go home.
And I believe you've testified to this previously. When you left, do you remember, was the garage door up or down?
It was open.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
You said you didn't
Thank you.
know.
You had been out on Friday, May 20th, 2016 in the morning. You came over to
maybe
the
that was
house, is that
Greg.
correct?
Correct.
And is it correct you had breakfast with Nikki?
Yes.
And that breakfast took place at her home, is that right?
Yes.
So you were at Berkeley. Did you drive over on that occasion?
Yes.
And when you drove over, you observed her car was parked in the garage. Is that correct?
Yes,
And am I correct that the two of you then did some rummage sale shopping?
yes.
Did you drive to that or did you walk around?
It was just in her neighborhood in the cul-de-sac area, so we just stayed there.
Was your vehicle in the driveway at that point in time?
Yes, on the left side of the driveway.
And how long would you say that you went rummage sale shopping?
I think we were together for maybe about 2.5 hours.
And is it correct at about 11 a.m.
Did
you
you
were
get
done and you
anything
returned to your
good?
vehicle?
Roughly, yes.
And did you leave at that point in time?
Shortly after, yes.
And Nikki went in to take a shower, is that right?
Yes,
Were you driving a silver Chevrolet Equinox at that point in time?
yes,
But this was on Friday, May 20th at roughly 11 a.m. that you left, is that right?
yes,
And that would be the morning when you finished the rummage sale shopping?
yes.
No further questions, thank you.
Any redirect?
No, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Step down.
I don't
Excuse.
get it.
Your next witness?
Olmsted to the stand.
Mr. Olmsted, if you come forward, Jody will swear.
Hold on. Before we get any further into the defense's stuff, we got to swing back around to day 7, part 1. We goofed it.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Whenever you're ready, attorney will say.
Day 7, part 1. So this is the Fitbit guy. I don't really remember what all
Sergeant
he had to
Lucknow,
say.
just again, refreshing your information for the jury. Your
But for
position
some
with the Sheriff's
reason, when
Office
I did this,
I'm a sergeant with the investigative division.
And your role into investigating the Nicole Vanderheiden case was?
he had something
Initially, I responded to
interesting.
the scene where Nicole was located, and then since then, I've had further follow-up roles.
As part of your follow-up role, did you have involvement in writing search warrants to obtain records from Google relative to Mr. Burch?
Yes, I did.
And how did that come about?
Through the investigation, we were able to locate Mr. Burch's Google Gmail account in police records. Based on that Gmail account, I completed a search warrant to Google for location data specifically.
And what was,
We would object at this time for the reasons stated many times before, and we'd ask that it be a continued objection throughout this process.
We'll note the continuing objection, which is tantamount to having counsel object to every question during this line of testimony. By noting a continuing objection, counsel won't have to object to every question. So the continuing objection is noted pursuant to the court's previous ruling on this issue. Court will overrule the objection and the questions can continue along this issue.
Noted.
Of course, you may object
But
on other
shut
grounds
up.
during the course of the testimony. And Detective Lopnow, I'm going to ask that you speak up so the jury can hear you. Go ahead, Attorney Lassay.
and the information regarding Mr. Burch's Gmail address, where was that obtained?
Through the Green Bay Police records as a result of the crash investigation that was done.
There was a forensic download done of Mr. Burch's phone at that time,
Yes,
and you obtained his Gmail address from that forensic download.
yes.
And what did you do then to obtain the follow-up records from Google?
I applied for a search warrant based on that Gmail address, which was subsequently approved, and then I submitted that to Google.
Did Google respond to your request?
Yes, they did.
And did they provide all of the data that you had requested, including location data for that Gmail address?
Yes, they did.
And what format did you receive that in?
There was an Excel spreadsheet listing out dates and times as well as coordinates, longitude and latitude in that Excel spreadsheet.
When Google provided the data to you, did they also provide a certification
Yes, they did.
as to the authenticity of the data itself?
Yes.
Did you receive the information from Google in a paper format?
No, I received it via email, so electronically.
And what did you do with it when you received it?
I downloaded the data, made a disk of it to be turned into evidence at the sheriff's office, and then I also downloaded the data so I could review it.
Sergeant Lofton, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 158. Can you identify that?
This is the letter I received when I received the information from Google regarding that information that was sent to me.
And 159, can you identify that for the jury as well?
159 is the certificate of authenticity that I received also from Google regarding the information.
And what is Exhibit 160, Sergeant?
Exhibit 160 is a DVD disc containing that information that I received from Google.
And you put the information on that disk?
Yes, I did.
And you believe it's a true and accurate copy of the information that you received directly from Google?
Yes.
I would move for the admission of those exhibits, Your Honor.
Any objection to 158, 159, and 160 subject to cross?
No.
Can I see 158, 159, please? All right. Exhibits 158, 159, and 160 are received. You may continue.
Your Honor, can I approach?
No. I don't remember.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We had a discussion about presentation of other documents through this witness and when that's going to come in. And so I think we figured out
Oh, I think
a
this is
mutual
what it
acceptable
was.
schedule. So now we may continue with this questioning of Detective Lopnow.
Your Honor, Sergeant Lopnow, after you received that information from Google, did you review the information on the spreadsheet yourself, or what did you do with it?
I did view the information. There was information on there. I believe it was in Universal Time, so the timestamp was off. So it was difficult to make sense of the exact date and times compared to the locations given. So at that point, we involved our crime analyst, Tyler Bailing, to assist us in correcting that time and figuring out.
Because they couldn't add time.
Your understanding that essentially is a spreadsheet that
That's
includes
confusing.
times, locations, and the way in which the location is determined?
Yes.
You were able to do that on the spreadsheet?
Yes.
You then turned it over to analyst Bailing for further analysis?
Yes.
Did there come a time that you became involved in obtaining information regarding Doug Dietrich's Fitbit and records from Fitbit about Mr. Dietrich's activities?
Yes, there was.
And what was your involvement in that activity?
I completed a search warrant, which was subsequently approved and then submitted to Fitbit for records for Doug Dietrich's Fitbit device.
And did Fitbit respond to your request for information?
Yes, they did.
And did they provide documents to you responsive to your request?
They did.
And how did those documents come to you?
Via email, electronically. In form of an Excel spreadsheet, which had several documents within that Excel spreadsheet showing the activity from the Fitbit.
And when you received those documents electronically, what did you do with them?
Initially, I downloaded them to a disk to be turned into evidence at the sheriff's office, and I also retained a copy for my own records to review.
Did you review those documents?
Yes, I did.
Did you do anything further with them in addition to reviewing them?
We reviewed the documents. I believe they were also turned over to Tyler Bailing, the crime analyst.
Sergeant Lopnow, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 161. Indicate what that document is.
Exhibit 161 is a copy of the certification letter that was sent from Fitbit verifying the documents that they had sent me.
162?
162 is a DVD disc containing the information that I received from Fitbit.
And did you generate that disc?
Yes, I did.
Based on the information that you had received directly from Fitbit?
Yes.
And you believe it's a true and accurate copy of the information that you received from Fitbit?
Yes.
I would move for the admissions of 162, 161 and 162. I would note on 162 does include multiple documents. One is the spreadsheet of information from Fitbit. That is the information that we're actually seeking to move into evidence. There are other documents on there, including some charts or report from Fitbit, which we are not moving into evidence, but they're all on the same disk. And the reason they're presented on this disk is that that disk is the entirety of what was received.
Right, any objection to 161? Attorney Schuckert, subject to cross.
161 is the affidavit. I think for all of these, we have that standing objection. So even when I say no objection, I guess that means no objection to any other grounds. We have all those continued objections, which I think were 6, 7, or 8 in number. In terms of 162, that specific file on the disk is labeled Report of Findings on Doug Dietrich, Final 19 SEFT 2017.
I'm just dealing with 161 right now. Let me just look at it briefly. The court understands you have a continuing objection. No other grounds for objection is to 161 subject to cross?
No, thank you.
Then 161 is received. Now it's to 162. It's being offered, but with the understanding that only the spreadsheet information is really going to be presented. And this has been discussed earlier, knowing that any other objections subject to cross to the receipt of 162, that DVD disc.
No, Your Honor.
All right. 162 is received. And you can continue, Attorney Lassay.
Sergeant Lopnow, with respect to the Fitbit data, were you asked to do any further analysis on that data yourself and comparing it to known samples of Mr. Dietrich's activity?
Yes, I was. We had the videotape interviews of Mr. Dietrich in which he's on video with his Fitbit on his wrist. So I was asked to compare the data that we received from Fitbit to what was viewed in those videos.
Can you describe for the jury how you went about doing that?
I had the copy of the video. Just to give you an example, I have 2 screens on my computer. So I had the video on one screen and I had the Excel spreadsheet of the Fitbit data on the other screen. So I was comparing them side by side.
The Excel spreadsheet of the Fitbit data, how is that organized?
There's several spreadsheets within that document.
So defense has their own expert lady or whatever she is that did her own Fitbit analysis. that basically is telling them that their shit is hogwash. And so that's why they have a standing objection, that they're saying that their information is unreliable because their person says so. But they can put up their person to rebut this person and just go about your business and have a nice day. So whatever.
The one I used to compare was labeled steps by minute. So for example, there's also a spreadsheet in that document labeled distance by minute, I believe, and a couple other ones. But I used the one detailing the steps recorded per minute.
So really what you were interested in is comparing the number of steps on the Fitbit report to the number of steps that you were able to potentially observe Mr. Dietrich taking on the videos that you were watching.
Yes, that's correct.
When you received the information from Fitbit, was that initially in UTC or was that in Central Standard Time?
I believe it was Central Standard Time.
And were you able to adequately come to a conclusion about the accuracy of that data based on looking at it and comparing it to the known data on the video?
Yes, I was.
Did you watch the entirety of Mr. Dietrich's recorded interviews?
I did.
And those were two separate recorded interviews, is that correct?
Yes, the first interview by Sergeant Holzbach with her initial interview of Doug at his residence, as well as a follow-up interview at the sheriff's office by Detective Kingston and Deputy Caters.
And the first interview at Mr. Dietrich's house, how long was that interview?
I believe it was about 2 hours.
So you were able to view minute by minute Mr. Dietrich's activities and compare them to each minute of the recorded activities from Fitbit?
Yes, I was.
And the interview again at the sheriff's office, how long was that?
About 3 hours.
And were you able to do the same thing with respect to that data, compare the information minute by minute from Fitbit to your minute by minute observations of Mr. Dietrich's activities?
Yes, I did.
Is it fair to say that during large portions of each of those videos, there is no activity by Mr. Dietrich, either that he's seated or not moving?
Yes.
And when Mr. Dietrich is seated or not moving, what is the Fitbit registering?
It's registering that there are no steps being taken.
And that is reported in minute by minute data?
Yes.
0 steps per minute?
Yes.
Did you note any instances where Mr. Dietrich was not moving, but the Fitbit was registering activity?
There was a couple instances. One I recall during the initial interview by Sergeant Steffens at his residence, he pulled his phone out of his pocket. You can see his hands moving. He's not necessarily taking steps, but he's showing Sergeant Holzbach the phone. At that point, there are several steps recorded. Also, I remember in the interview at the sheriff's office, there are times when he begins talking with his hands. He's still seated, but he's moving his hands quite a bit. And at that point, there are some steps registered.
When you say
Told
some steps,
you.
are you saying 20, 50?
Hand.
No,
Hand
I
is moving.
don't remember the amount. It was maybe 8 or 10 steps at most. I don't recall. I'd have to review my notes.
Do you have a report that specifically outlined those instances where there were discrepancies?
So it
Yes, I do.
starts at
If you were able to review your report, would that allow you to
3537.
refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Sergeant Lieutenant Cheney, what's been marked as Exhibit 163, can you identify what that document is?
This is the report I generated from reviewing the video interviews and comparing them with the Fitbit data.
I'm not going to ask you to read from that report. What I'd ask you to do is review the report, and after you're done reviewing it, let me know what the rest of your
Oh, that one didn't
I
do
reviewed that.
anything.
Thank you.
It
Out of
counts
the,
steps
you
when
indicated
I'm
that it was
smoking
more
too.
than 5 hours total of video that you
Doing
observed.
this,
It was right
up
about
my
5 hours, maybe a
window.
little bit over,
So that's roughly 300
Oh
minutes.
my
is that
God.
accurate?
approximately.
3537.
Out of the 300 individual
Went up
minutes
to
that you noted,
35.
how many times did you observe
5-1.
a discrepancy between
Just from doing
Um,
this with my hand.
Mr. Dietrich not actually taking steps where you observed the Fitbit registering steps?
I believe there was about 3 times I observed that. And in those cases, he was moving his hands, but not necessarily moving his feet or taking steps.
Where's the Fitbit device affixed to his body if you could observe it?
It was on his left wrist.
It's actually registered wrist movement, correct?
Correct.
In addition,
Attach it
were
to
there
your
instances
leg.
where you could observe Mr. Dietrich taking steps where the device was not registering any activity?
There was a couple instances of that. I believe in the initial interview by Sergeant Holzbach, there was times when he was seated in close proximity to where she was sitting when they were completing a written statement. He does lean forward and get up to show her a phone. I believe that happened once or twice where no steps were registered. In reviewing the video, he's leaning forward from, I believe it was a bar stool in the kitchen and taking, stepping towards her to show her the phone, but not taking steps, so to speak, or making any jerky movements.
And that's a situation where Mr. Dietrich may have taken 1 or 2 steps forward, but the device did not register any activity.
Yes.
And you said that happened on 2 or 3 occasions in that video?
I believe it was once or twice in that video, and then in the video from the sheriff's office in his follow-up interview,
Okay,
there was a
but-
couple of occasions where he actually stood
Listen.
up, took a drink of his beverage, I believe, stretched.
If you are going to keep your Fitbit on you, it is going to register unless you are going to hold your hand completely still or leave it. It is going to register some movement. more than 16 steps to and from the bathroom. If you are going to have your Fitbit on while you are out murdering somebody, it's going to register some fucking movement. Okay? And it's going to register your sleep pattern. It's going to register what your REM sleep look like that night. It's going to register that. So, it's going to register your resting heart rate. It's going to register how many times you woke up. It's going to do that. Yes, it is a flawed system. It generally counts your steps, but it is flawed in that sense. It doesn't necessarily count your steps taken. No step counter counts your steps. It counts your movement. That is why you can take a step counter, shake it up, and boom, you've reached your step goal for the day.
And then sat down. So at that point, no steps were recorded. I believe there was also another instance where he got up to stretch
I'm out of
and
soda.
slowly paced a little bit in the interview room, and that also did not record any steps.
Were there instances in both videos?
Was his
I'll take
arms
the first
crossed?
interview where Mr. Dietrich is at his home, where he is observed actually actively taking several steps.
Yes, there are.
And when he's observed actively taking several steps, did the device register those steps according to the data you obtained from Fitbit?
Yes, it did.
In the second video at the sheriff's office, are there instances when Mr. Dietrich actually got up, took steps, and left the room?
There was.
And again, during those instances, was the device registering those steps when he got up and actively left the room?
Yes, it did.
So in summation, then it's fair to say that in the roughly 300 minutes, or 300 individual data sections that you reviewed, there were less than 10 discrepancies between the data and your observations.
Yes, I believe that would be accurate.
And in each of those situations where there was a discrepancy, there was an explanation for that, either wrist movement where he didn't take steps or very slow movement where it wasn't registering steps.
Yes.
Further questions at this time? Cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. Sergeant Lopnow, I just want to focus on this Fitbit data a little bit. So you said that you were able to watch the videos that were available to the Brown County Sheriff's Office of Doug Dietrich, correct?
Yes.
And you said it was about 2 hours on May 21st and 3 hours on May 20th.
If I remember correctly, yes.
So I know lawyers are pretty bad at math, but I'm going to try to do this. So as the state was saying, the minutes you were able to watch, that also means that, so there's 22 hours that you weren't able to identify any sort of Fitbit data and compare it to what Doug Dietrich was actually doing on video, correct?
Can you clarify what you're asking?
So you watched 2 hours on May 21st, 2 hours
Yes,
of video.
correct.
And there's 22 hours of time that you didn't watch.
That's correct. For this report, I was specifically comparing the data to the times that were on record that we had recorded.
So then just to put it in terms of minutes, that's 1,320 minutes of time that you yourself did not watch.
That's possible. I would need a calculator to confirm that.
Me too. And then same thing on May 22nd. So there's 3 hours you watched, but that also means that there's 21 hours that you don't have accounted for, correct?
Correct.
So then that's 1,260 minutes.
Again,
or around there.
Yes, very possible, yes.
So in total, that's 2,580 or right around there minutes that you didn't watch yourself.
Again, I can't give you exact numbers, but approximately, yes.
And you said that there was some errors in the Fitbit data, but they were minor in your opinion?
There were those small inconsistencies, as we discussed in watching the video compared to those times when it did record a couple steps. Mr. Dietrich is seen moving his hands at that time with the Fitbit on his wrist. A couple instances also, as we discussed, when he was taking steps, a couple steps, there wasn't a lot of motion. There were very slow movements, and at that time it did not record.
So those were errors in the data, albeit minor?
Yes.
And then I know you're trying to explain why those errors didn't happen. Do you have the technological background to be able to diagnose those errors? Or is
No.
it just your
No, but the next guy will.
I'm describing what I viewed in the video compared to the records, just that.
Okay. Do you have a background in technology where you can tell us how Fitbit operates?
No, I don't.
Can you tell us how
No,
the Fitbit app
but the
operates?
next
No, I
guy
can't.
will.
If somebody's not wearing a Fitbit device, does that mean that they are likely not recording steps then?
I would believe if the Fitbit device is not being worn, it's not recording steps, yes.
Have you done any further research into Fitbit to familiarize yourself with it?
No, I haven't.
I didn't want to just back up with you further than what the state did. Back in June, you had returned from Madison and you were still the lead investigator in this case, correct? Or a co-lead investigator?
Yeah, at that time, Sergeant Slinger had officially taken that lead role.
And on June 3rd, you obtained a search warrant to download the data of Doug Dietrich's phone?
Yes, I believe so.
And Doug Dietrich's phone was a Samsung Galaxy S4, correct?
I believe it was.
And his phone number was 920-621-0593?
I don't recall that specifically.
If I show you your report, will that refresh your memory?
Yes, it would. That is the number listed for Douglas Dietrich's contact information in our report management system.
Thank you. And then did you execute that search warrant?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe how that process worked?
After having the search warrant approved, the phone was turned over to crime analyst Tyler Bailing, and he performed an extraction of the phone at that time.
And then that extraction would have been put into evidence at the Brown County Sheriff's Office?
Yes.
And then it's stored pretty much there throughout the course of the investigation?
It's in evidence. I believe Tyler also keeps working copies for review.
And then that information would eventually be sent to the defense as part of discovery?
I believe it would, yes.
And then in July and September, did you also collect DNA samples from Adam Kolpak and Matt Wazenberg?
Yes, I believe I did.
And they gave you consent to take those DNA samples?
Yes.
And can you just identify the report that I showed you earlier?
The one he provided me is a report that I completed on the service of the search warrant on Mr. Dietrich's phone on June 3rd.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Now, just briefly, you were asked about all of the hours on May 21st for which you did not review any video surveillance of Doug Dietrich. Is that because you didn't have video surveillance of those time periods?
Pretty much those time periods, yes.
On the 21st, so on May 21st, it's Saturday, the only known surveillance video or video information that you have from Mr. Dietrich is the recordings that Sergeant Holzbach took at his house. Is that correct?
Yes.
And likewise, on May 22nd of 2016, the only known video recorded time periods you have for Mr. Dietrich are the 3 hours that were at the Brown County Sheriff's Office. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
So it's not as if you intentionally failed to review other video. These are the only time periods for which you have known video surveillance of Mr. Dietrich when you can observe that he's wearing his Fitbit and you have accurate timestamps.
That's correct.
I have questions, sir.
Maybe cross?
A little. So Sergeant
Oh,
Lockdown,
for
I know you didn't
God's
have
sakes.
surveillance video for those times,
Hush.
but essentially what I was trying to drive home is that means that you're not able to verify that Fitbit data at those periods of time that we went over, correct?
Correct. I was able to verify specifically what we have.
What are you whining?
Do you have a cell phone?
Yes, I do.
And when you call somebody, does it work most of the time?
In most cases, yes.
And then sometimes that technology just doesn't work for whatever reason?
At times.
You also send text messages with your cell phone?
Yes.
And sometimes, or most of the times, I imagine that works.
Most of the time, yes.
And then sometimes it just doesn't work.
At times, yes.
And then again, same thing with say GPS. Have you ever used a GPS device?
Yes, I have.
And that works most of the time?
Yes.
And then sometimes it doesn't work?
At times.
And again, with the Fitbit, if somebody's not wearing it, it will not provide information that'll be used, correct? Or show step data?
Yeah, I would conclude that it's not being worn. It's not recording any of that information.
Nothing further.
Any redirect? All right. Attorney Lassay, did you need your break at this time? I take an earlier break than usual this morning. Ladies and
Okay,
gentlemen. We'll be back.
so
in
the
15
next
minutes.
one is they're gonna do his
Because,
GPS.
it doesn't do anyone any good if nothing is being heard. You are the triers of fact. All right. Thank you. Attorney Lassay, you can continue with your case.
And that is based on Google's database of known wireless networks, where Google knows the physical location of those networks.
following
If a
his
user is able
GPS.
to connect to those networks, they are able
So
to
this
determine
is
that they
the-
have to be within a circumference
This was
of where
the
that wireless
Wi-Fi
network is.
guy for the-
And they're able to determine accuracy for each of those three ways of positioning their users.
Does a user have to be logged into the network in order for it to generate a data point for wireless network?
They do not.
Can you explain just from a user standpoint, as you're utilizing your phone, how would you know that the wireless network is within reach?
Yes. So depending on how you have your phone configured, the way wireless networks work is they're constantly pushing out a broadcast signal to devices that are within a range of that wireless router. So depending on how your phone is configured, you might be notified by your phone that there's a wireless network in your area that you can connect to, or you may not, depending on your settings. You don't necessarily need to connect to that network to have communication with the network for Google to be able to put a position on your device.
Likewise, with GPS, you mentioned that Google would register GPS coordinates if there's an app that is essentially requesting GPS or uses GPS coordinates. Do you have to be actively using an app in order for those GPS coordinates to register?
That app could be running in the background of the device. A user wouldn't specifically have to have it up on their screen for that app to be using the GPS function of that device.
You are aware of apps that exist that are constantly looking or regularly looking for GPS data, regardless of whether you're actively using that application?
Yes.
When you obtained the information from Google, did you analyze it?
Yes, I did.
How is that information provided to you from Google?
It's reported in a spreadsheet for each location on its own line with the date and time that that location was determined, how Google determined it, and how confident they are in the radius of that position.
So all of those data points are provided to you directly from Google?
Correct.
From your standpoint, how easy or difficult is it for you to process the information that is provided to you by Google?
It's relatively simple.
How did you do that?
I used Google Earth software just to input the latitude and longitude coordinates of those specific locates.
As you were using that software to analyze the data on Mr. Burch's phone, did you locate any information of interest relative to his phone's locations during the relevant time period?
Yes, I did.
What did you observe?
I observed Mr. Burch's phone being at a bar on South Broadway. I observed Mr. Burch's phone traveling south down Broadway into the pier. I observed Mr. Burch's phone traveling to Ms. Vanderhayden's residence on Berkeley. I observed Mr. Burch's phone traveling to the site where the body was found. I observed Mr. Burch's phone leaving the site where the body was found and traveling west on 172 and ultimately ending up back at his residence on Greenwood.
Yeah.
And you noted the locations of the observations. Did you also note that the times of the locations of those phones were consistent with the known time frame of Nicole Vanderheyden's death?
Yes, I did.
Were you able to
Well,
plot those
gosh,
points on a map
damn.
and again create a demonstrative or a series of demonstratives using the data set that was provided to you by Google?
Yes, I was.
And what form did that demonstrative take?
It is a playable video showing the locations provided from Google and their associated times.
Did you also demonstrate maps?
Yes, I did.
And then with respect to 169, it actually is located on that thumb drive, or we have it stored on the computer. We've shown the contents of the thumb drive to the defense. So I would ask is that analysts be allowed to play the video or the jury, move into it into evidence and ask to play it, have it confirm that it is in fact the video he created.
All right, so you're going to show this so the record's clear. You're going to show what's been marked as 169 you have on your computer. You'll show it, and then the witness can identify it as his product.
Correct.
All right.
So basically, he just said, I saw him leave the bar, go to her house, drive down the street where her body was dumped, and go back home. And I got the times he was there. And all of it. Can we talk through this? Can you talk me through what I'm seeing? We're just going to look at it. That's fun. Like, so these are all the little places that they pinpointed him. Can't tell shit. Is that a little better? Quality. Over the bridge. Over the bridge and through the woods. To grandmother's house we go.
Is that video that you just watched accurately reflect the demonstrative video that you created for presentation in this case?
Yes, it does.
Sorry, my daughter touched the
I would move
camera
for admission of
cord.
that item into evidence, Your Honor.
Subject to crossing objection.
Makes it sketchy.
All right, 169 is
Now, Analyst Bailey, it's difficult to see from that video the specific timeframes in which Mr. Burch's phone was at certain locations. Do you recall from your preparation in this case approximately what time on May 21st, 2016, Mr. Burch's phone is last located in the area of Richard Cranium's bar on Broadway?
I believe roughly 2:45 a.m.
If you were able to review your notes, would that allow you to refresh your recollection as to the specific time?
I don't know if I'd have that data available.
Initially in the video, it demonstrated Mr. Burch at the area of Richard Cranium's and then traveling to his residence. Is that consistent with the data that you plotted?
That's correct.
And the phone was at his residence for a brief time before heading down Broadway?
That is correct.
And do you know approximately what time Mr. Burch's phone arrived at the area of Berkeley Road?
I believe it was 3:01.
3:01 a.m. on May 21st?
That's correct.
16?
It is storming.
Our sidebar was just in reference to make sure there's no confusion about the data in these photographs and how they're going to be explained on the record. So Primo Lissay is marking these photos, and when they're ready, they can be presented to the witness.
You know, Bailey, I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibits 170 through 174. Can you describe as a set what those are?
These are positions for Mr. Burch's device based on the Google records.
At various timeframes?
That's correct.
Those are generally all out in front of the residence on Berkeley Road, is that correct?
Yes, they are.
And specifically exhibit 170, what time frame is that?
3:01:01 a.m. on 5/21/2016.
And then exhibit 171,
3:04:03 a.m. on 5/21/2016.
exhibit 172,
3:50:55 a.m. on 5/21/2016.
173.
3:52:26 a.m. on 5/21/2016.
And then can you explain what 174 is?
174 is a overlay on a map of every position in front of that address on Berkeley as provided by Google.
So there were several different data points. The first being the time of arrival, 3:01 at the Berkeley address. The last being 3:52 a.m., roughly the time of departure. During that time frame, there's actually a number of different data points that you received.
Yes, there are many.
And 174 overlays all of those.
That's correct.
I would ask that these be published for the jury and to allow analyst mailing to explain them as they arise.
First of all, any objection to 170 through 174, subject to cross, understanding or continuing objection that as to these particular photographs?
No.
All right, so 170, 171, 172, and 173 and 174 are all received, and they may be published.
Analyst mailing, I'm showing what I believe has been marked as Exhibit 170. Is that an accurate depiction?
Yes, it is.
And can you first initiate or explain for the jury what the data point is involved there?
Sure. This data point was determined by Google for Mr. Burch's phone on 5/21/2016 at 3:01:01 a.m. You can see the location given in latitude and longitude. The size of the highlighted circle represents the accuracy that Google determined that position to be. The source of that position was determined by a wireless network that Mr. Burch's device had become in broadcast range of.
So Google tells you how they know he's at that location, source being Wi-Fi?
That's correct.
And then they also tell you what their accuracy is with respect to that location.
That's correct.
So essentially saying located anywhere within the green circle.
That is correct.
And based
feel
on the
like
type of
that's
source of information, Wi-Fi, GPS, and cellular tower,
Nicole's
the
house.
size of the circle will vary. Is that correct?
That is accurate.
Let's see, just for the record, in the size of the circle is what, 232 feet, or the radius?
So is that what that is, the radius?
Yep.
232?
232.94 feet.
And it's 232.94 from the point of the arrow, correct?
Correct.
So essentially saying located anywhere within the green circle.
That is correct.
And the next exhibit? This is Exhibit 171, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the time of that particular data point?
3:04:03 a.m. on 5/21/2016.
And again, the source of that data point?
Wi-Fi again on this one.
And Google in that in particular instance is telling you that the accuracy is within 357.61 feet of the location?
That is correct.
So again, saying that the device is located somewhere within the green circle.
That is accurate.
You know why different Wi-Fi sources might have a different degree of accuracy?
Different manufacturers of these wireless access points could use different hardware and it's different signal depending on the band of the signal that they're using. There's varying degrees of what the range basically was, that you'd have to be within a certain circumference of a wireless network. One network you might have to be within 50 feet, another one 350 feet, depending on the hardware that's being used.
So based on the actual device, the strength of the signal could extend further with some devices than it does with others?
That's correct.
And again, is it common that a phone would be seeking out connection points to wireless devices, even if the phone's not being actively used?
That's correct.
So Mr. Burch doesn't have to be actively using the cell phone here to be connecting to those various Wi-Fis.
That's correct.
And Exhibit 172. What is the timestamp for 172?
3:50:55 a.m.
So it shows that the device is still in that general location during the time frame at 3:50 a.m. and 55 seconds, correct?
That's correct.
And again, the source of that information is again a Wi-Fi
That is
signal.
correct.
And that one again accurate to within 239.50 feet, and the circle would once again represent the area within which the phone must be found.
That's correct.
Can we just clarify the exact time? So that's 3:00 and then 55 seconds.
It's 3:50.
3:50.
55 seconds.
How do we go
And
backwards in
Analyst Bailing, is this,
time?
Exhibit 173,
Jackass.
Yes, it is.
and the timestamp of 173.
3:52 and 26 seconds on 5/21/2016.
And again, the known source there is Wi-Fi,
That's correct.
and that accuracy is to within 311.68 feet.
That's correct.
And again, the phone would have been located somewhere within the green circle on that map.
That's correct.
And then finally, 174.
Whoa.
What does 174?
So many.
174 represents each location that Google determined that device to be at in this specific region on Berkeley Road. You can see there's many points, and they all kind of overlap.
So he was in this area.
When Google reported the data to you, is it reported to you in feet or meters?
It is reported in meters.
So then when you use the circles on the map, did you convert those to feet?
Yes, it did.
Did you use a calculation to do that?
Yes.
Did you create similar demonstratives for Hoffman Road where Nicole's body was found?
Yes, I did.
Analyst Bailey, I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibits 175 to 180. Can you describe what those are as a set?
These are demonstrative images of where Mr. Burch's phone is located in relation to where Nicole's body was found, based on the data from Google.
Google's a son of a bitch.
I would move for admission of those exhibits and also request to publish.
Google is
Any
your
objection
big
to
brother
175
who's
to 180
always
No. 175, 176,
watching.
177, 178, 179.
Always
received.
watching,
And they
Wazowski.
may be published at this time.
Exhibit 175. What is the timestamp on that exhibit?
3:58 and 23 seconds on 5/21/2016.
So it's 3:58 a.m., roughly 5-6 minutes after the last known point on Berkeley Road.
That's correct.
And the source of that particular data point?
GPS.
And the accuracy of that?
32.81 feet.
It's even
note
more
that's significantly
accurate.
More accurate than Wi-Fi?
Yes, it is.
Is that generally true of the GPS data points?
Yes, it is.
GPS will tell you you're
know why
in
that
the
is?
fucking
It's
woods.
a more precise calculation.
And 176. And the timestamp of that?
3:58 and 54 seconds a.m. on 5/21/2016.
And the accuracy of that particular location?
9.84 feet.
He was there.
And the next data point? That's exhibit 177.
4:01 and 46 seconds a.m. on 5/21/2016.
And the accuracy of that particular hit?
9.84 feet.
And then exhibit 178.
4:02 and 18 seconds a.m. on 5/21/2016.
And the accuracy of that location?
9.84 feet.
And that appears to have moved closer out of the field from the previous location. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Burch, his phone is leaving the field at that time.
That's correct.
And
He was in the field.
the
Now
next
he's leaving the
exhibit
field.
179. What does this indicate?
These are all of the locations that were determined by Google in that farm field on the south side of Hoffman Road.
And exhibit 180.
180 shows two different data points. One on 4:01 and 31 seconds a.m. on 5/21/2016. The next 4:01 46 a.m. on 5/21/2016. Both with an accuracy of 9.84 feet.
So again, the first data point is closer to where the body was located. Second data point closer to the exit of the field on Hoffman Road.
That's correct.
And there's roughly 15 seconds between the data points.
That is correct.
And did you calculate the distance between those 2 points?
I did.
What was it?
Center to center, 82 feet.
How did you do that?
With Google Earth.
So that would demonstrate that the vehicle traveled roughly 82 feet in 15 seconds.
That's correct.
In addition to collecting the various location data for Mr. Burch's activities on the 20th and 21st of May 2016, did you do anything else in terms of your analysis of the phone to determine if Mr. Burch actually had the phone with him during those time periods?
Yes, I did.
What thing to confirm that?
All the data points that Google provided, I believe it was almost a month span, 16,000 different records were plotted on a map.
And you did that to
Did you
compare
say
to locations where you knew
16,000?
Mr. Burch lived?
That is correct.
In fact, during the very short time frame that we were able to demonstrate on the video, Mr. Burch returned to the Greenwood residence. There's a data point consistent with the Greenwood residence at about 2:38 a.m. And then again at the end of the video, just after 4 a.m. that morning, correct?
That's correct.
So the phone data originates at the Greenwood address, 11 p.m. on the 20th, returns to the residence at about 2:38 a.m. And then again, finally returns after he's at Hoffman Road at 4:28 a.m.
That's correct.
Did you also confirm, in addition to using the data, did you look at any other information from the phone to show that Mr. Burch had been using it before and after these data points?
Yes, I did.
And what were you able to observe?
Text messages and call logs.
And those are text messages and call logs to people that we know are associates of Mr. Burch,
That is correct.
such as his girlfriend, Jordan Schuyler.
That's correct.
Indicated that you plotted several known data points over the course of the roughly 1 month time period where Google provided data. Did you compare Mr. Burch's phone data from the afternoon and evening of May 21st, 2016 to a known location that evening?
Yes, I did.
And where did the phone travel to?
It actually traveled out into Lake Michigan.
So at one point in time, there's actually a data point in the middle of Lake Michigan as if they had been fishing.
That's correct.
Is it down in southern part of Wisconsin?
Yes, it is.
That Greenwood address that we referenced earlier, that's the known address for Ed and Linda Jackson.
That's correct.
No more questions at this time, Your Honor.
You want to begin your cross, Attorney Strickland?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Analyst Baleen, focusing on the Google Earth images that we just saw in that video that we watched. When you see that red dot moving, showing on the video, that's not the exact location where the phone is located, correct?
It is not.
So like when we saw the red dot on a warehouse and the multiple houses when it was moving, that's where one of those green circles could come up.
That's correct.
Showing that it's somewhere in that area?
Yes.
So then when we focus on Berkeley Road and the phone is there for a longer period of time, every one of those red dots that come up, that doesn't mean the phone is actively moving to each one of those spots, correct?
It does not.
And again, that's where we would have those green circles overlaid. It could be in any of those green circles at that time.
That's correct.
Jody, can we switch
Why the fuck is he
So
out there
I'm going
then?
to just replay part of that video
Just
for you.
hanging
I believe
out?
That is that 169 date?
Yes. Let's put the doubt
I believe this is
that he's just
169,
out
and you're
there.
gonna play
I'm
a
start
portion of that.
just a portion. So this is at 248, I
Your
believe, and
argument's
then I believe
stupid.
on
Just
exhibit
shut up.
170, you were also able to note that that data point that I'll point to with my mouse in the middle of the screen, that 352, that was 352.26. Is that accurate?
Can you repeat which article you're referring to?
I believe it's 170 or 173.
Just so the record knows, right now you're showing a still photograph.
Right, it's paused at 248.
Okay.
So that's 352.26.
That's correct.
And then I'm going to play until 323 on exhibit 169. So I stopped the video at 323. So that data
Good
point at
job.
358, that means that that's about under a 6-minute drive, about a 5.5-minute drive.
Yes.
When you were watching that video, would you call that a direct route from Berkeley Road to that Hoffman Field?
Yes.
And then I'm just going to play one section of that video again, starting at 310. So for watching that video, would you call that a direct route from Berkeley Road to that Hoffman Field?
Yes.
And then I'm just going to play one section of that video again, starting at 310. So we'll play it at 311. So you see that data point right at GV and Hoffman, correct?
Yes.
And that says 356.
Yes.
But then you notice a data point before it that also says 356?
Yes.
So I'm just going to play from 311 to 323 again. So again, that was a direct route from that intersection to that field, correct?
Correct.
And that was under 2 minutes?
Correct.
We saw the right. In your further investigation of this case, did you collect surveillance video from Greystone Ale House?
Yes, I did.
What did you do with that information?
I personally reviewed the surveillance video from Greystone Ale House.
And then did you log that in evidence?
I'm not sure if I logged it into evidence or one of the investigators logged it into evidence.
But you handled all of that appropriately?
Correct.
No, I spit all over it. And then rubbed it on my ass crack. Contaminated the fuck out of it.
If you log that property or that evidence into your property, would that show up on a Brown County Sheriff's Office property list?
Yes, it would.
And then would that be under your name?
Yes, it would.
If I show you a property list, would that help refresh your memory?
Yes.
I just said.
So I'm showing you exhibit 181, correct?
Yes.
And that's that Brown County Sheriff's Office property list?
Yes, it is.
And at the bottom, does that indicate that you would log the Greystone Ale House surveillance video into property?
Yes, it does.
And you followed all the proper protocols and everything?
Yes, I did.
You also noted you conducted a lot of analysis on cell phones in this
Blinked
case. Did you
really
analyze any of
fast.
the computers at Doug Dietrich's house?
I believe I examined a hard drive from Doug Dietrich's house.
Do you know how many?
I don't recall.
How familiar are you with Fitbit devices?
I'm aware of what they are and what they do on a high level.
At a what?
A high level,
What does that mean?
meaning I understand the basics of how they work.
Can you tell us more specifically how they work, like the mechanisms within them or how they communicate with the app?
Nope, that's not what
They
he's here
communicate with the
for.
app via Bluetooth connection.
And can you tell us how they send that data information from one to the other?
I cannot.
Can you tell us the complexities of the data in terms of how it's recovered or how it is stored?
I guess I don't understand the question.
That's not what he's here
So-
for.
Can you tell
Bro
us
sandwich.
what device this specifically was that you examined?
Are you referring to the Fitbit device?
Yeah.
There's a Fitbit Flex.
Do you know, are those waterproof?
I do not know that.
Do you know how Fitbit stores their data?
Are you asking how it's stored locally on the Fitbit device or on the phone?
No, Fitbit themselves.
I do not.
Do you know how users can manipulate Fitbit data?
I do not.
So you don't know if you can edit the Fitbit data?
I do not know that.
What happens when you
I
are
don't
not wearing a
think
Fitbit
Doug
device? Is that
Dietrich
gonna
would
register
know if
steps?
you could manipulate
I
it
do not know.
either there,
Can you
Poncho.
provide us the error rate of a Fitbit?
I cannot.
Are you aware of Fitbit communities dedicated to troubleshooting and fixing errors within Fitbits?
I am not.
Are you aware of how many Fitbit app updates there have had been?
I do not know that.
So if I were to have to update a Fitbit, or if somebody had to, and it says for a bug fix, can you describe to us what that means?
A bug in terms of software?
It would just say BUG fix. Can you describe what that is or what that means?
It'd be hard for me to speculate exactly what they are fixing in their update.
And then just very briefly, back to when you mentioned looking at Mr. Burch's phone data and the articles that he viewed involving this case. When was the last time that he viewed an article involving this case?
Can I refresh my memory by reviewing my report?
Absolutely. I think we can just show you the exhibit. I believe it's 168.
6/6/2016, 8:39 and 9 seconds a.m.
Do any of these articles tell you that Doug Dietrich was released from custody?
They do not.
So just very specifically on your knowledge from these articles viewed, Mr. Burch would have had no way of knowing that Mr. Dietrich was released from custody in this case.
Based on the data extracted from the phone, no.
I have no further questions.
All right, redirect. Officer Balick, you may be excused. You may step down.
Okay. Well, we're going to stop this one here because it's storming and I don't know if it's going to cut out on me or if it's not. So we're just gonna play it safe for right now. But yeah, so not a lot happened on this one. I thought there would be more interesting things coming through, but we're closing in on the end. I'm pretty sure prosecution rests after this, and yeah, we went out of order because babysitter lady testified again because defense wanted to get in the whole conversation that they had about how Doug said she hit her head and she wanted to walk home. Again, don't really know the context of it. Babysitter didn't know the context of it. They left it at that. Why defense didn't ask him about that, I don't really know. He was on the stand. Don't really know why they didn't ask him about that. They asked him about the conversation between him and the babysitter. So it's, but who knows? So we just really, I think, have day 9. Because I don't really think there was much more of anything good to go. But yeah, so that's that on that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Yeah. I mean, it's really kind of a cut and dry, you know, GPS puts him there. Fitbit puts dude at home in bed, getting up with the baby, doing the things with the baby. All of that, you know, dude got on the stand. He doesn't sound, oh, we have Burch's testimony. That's what we still have. My bad. That should still be interesting. But yeah, so stay tuned for that little doozy. I knew we were forgetting something. I was like, why did I watch this? This was boring. I'm so sorry to bore you with this one. Hi. Okay, I was bored. Okay, well, go to the next one. Go on to the next one, because I'm going to go on to the next one. All right. I'll see you on the next one. Let me know what you think. At least still like it. Still subscribe. There'll be more. There'll be better. I'll be better the next time. I promise. All right. Just, all right. Peace.